Well, this morning I've stayed local and popped down to a local reserve. This is Hills and Holes. I've never seen Hawthorne blossom like this. Coupled with the cow parsley, which is the umbellifera that you can see in the meadow at the side of the River Meaden here, it looks like it snowed. The blossom is incredible, and the scent equally so. But while Hills and Holes is absolutely full of a whole range of flowers, it's not just a monoculture of hawthorn. It's carpeted with buttercups, daisies, and a whole range of various flora. And there's some really interesting flora here. You may well hear the big problem that this reserve faces, and you may well be able to see the roof of the next house that's going up directly next to this reserve. There was a lot of pressure put on to try and get that development stopped, but unfortunately that pressure didn't work, and the houses are well and truly up. I find filming this very difficult, if I'm being quite honest. This has always been a very quiet little reserve, right on the very edge of Market Warsop. It's had its problems in the past, mostly with small bonfires and bit of drug taking. Fairly typical routine fare, to be honest, of any site which is close to human habitation and development. But it's the new development that I have the big problem with. I did do a video before they started to do it, and somehow, I don't know how they've done it, but the field is now raised in which they've built the houses. But it's the sound. You have a beautiful scene like this, flower rich grassland, the hawthorns and all the shrubs that are coming into flower, and then you get the sound of workmen shouting, building machinery. This is development that's too close to wildlife for me. Should never have been allowed, and those that pass that development should hang their heads in shame. I've only lived in Market Warsop for just over 30 years now, so I suppose I can class myself as a local. But I've come here on and off many times over those years. Come here to record or look for various things. It's a great spot. It's not a big quarry, it's not deep or anything like that, but it's an absolute fabulous bit of habitat. And if I remember right, it's actually on a bit of limestone, so it's a very, very important piece of habitat in terms of county records and county value. We don't have much limestone grassland in Nottinghamshire, and yet you get the feeling, at least I get the feeling, that if the developers could have had this place, they would have snatched their hands off. As difficult as it might be to develop, I'm sure they could have done something with it, given half the chance. But the whole the whole feel of the place has gone, at least while they're doing the building. Listen to that. It used to be somewhere you could come for a bit of peace and quiet. You could walk around here and maybe see one or two people. Maybe quite often not see a soul. That seems to have gone. It may all seem well and good, and they keep shouting that there's such a high demand for houses and we need to build 300,000 houses a year. I don't think we do, to be honest. But the ever-increasing need for building land puts pressure on sites like this. Can't remember the exact figure of how many new houses are going up, but it's an awful lot of people that are going to be moving in, and that will increase the pressure on this site because more people will visit here. We'll use this as a recreation ground and probably will ultimately trash the place. We'll lose scenes like this, and that would be a shame. A great shame. I can't believe, when I think about it, the amount of development and land that has been developed that's happened and occurred during my lifetime. And I fear that while ever we've got governments and councils, then they will always be banging the drum of we need more housing, we need more housing. There'll be a constant ever presence, and we'll lose habitats like this. Well, from what I've seen, or rather what I've trod in, it seems like the cattle are already here. And the cattle that get put in here are quite notorious. Now, I'm used to cattle, but I don't like this lot, and they've always been the same. There's something about the cattle that get in here, and they're not to be trusted at all. But I don't mind a bit of grazing, but this place is overgrazed. It's never not grazed. It's been grazed every single year of the 30 odd years that I've been living locally, and it always gets grazed early. Now today is only the 22nd of May, far too early to start grazing. Absolutely ridiculous. Nothing gets a chance really here, and it's funny because there's hardly any butterflies. I've just seen a couple of green veined whites, and that's it. It used to be full of common blues. Brown Argus was here, dingy skipper. This is a place that has enormous potential, but I think that potential is lessening with each passing year. It would be a terrific shame if ever we lost this. A shame not to the people that live locally and appreciate having an environment on the doorstep like this, but a shame for the wildlife, for the fauna and flora that exists here. It really is a fabulous little site, and yet I can see it disappearing. I really can. I can see it disappearing within a number of years. And I think some of the floral diversity, or at least the amount of floral diversity, is also starting to decrease. The mounds that you can see in front used to be great. Obviously, plants still have to flower, but it just doesn't seem the same as it used to. Much of the site is like this. Lots of hawthorn, buttercups, and what we used to call daily red, or the old cow parsley, which is the umbrella for in amongst the grass. It's appropriately named hills and holes, or hills and hollers, because that's what it is. Lots of up and down, all old remnants of when this was a small quarry, never large scale. I doubt whether there's much in the way of machinery here in its heyday. All long since gone, of course, and we've been left with this fabulous habitat. There are some areas across the river in the direction we're facing which is more sort of grasslandy, and there's some good orchids on there. There are some orchids on here, none that appear to be out yet, at least I've not come across any. But it's a super site, and that's a male brimstone working its way towards us at the side of the hawthorns. Here it comes. Oh, and an orange tip low over the buttercups in front now. So that's looking west from where I'm stood. Let's have a look east from here. And that's the view looking east. That's the building offices. On the video that I did when this was still just a field, I came down the hedge on the right hand side. The field was obviously fallow, and it was just a couple of days before they started building here that I filmed it. But the amount of earthworks that's gone on has been unbelievable. There's been some huge mounds of earth. In fact, there's still some down at the bottom end. I can't understand why they dug out the way they did. But in a few months' time, maybe by the end of this year, right up to this metal fencing will be somebody's house and garden. Their gardens will then back on to this nature reserve. And we all know what houses that back onto countryside tend to do. Or rather, the householders who own or rent those houses tend to do, and that's to chuck all their rubbish over the garden fence at the bottom of the garden. And that will obviously include non-native plants, which will have an effect ultimately on this nature reserve. It's disgusting and disappointing at the same time. I do love this place though. So it's just a great place just to pop in, have a wheezy slow wander for an hour, not use any beating tray or whacking anything with a stick or sweep netting, just to slowly wander and just visually search or just look, see what's on the flowers. That's how I do most of my recording work, just ambling along and making a mental note of what I see. Look at that, beautiful. If only the sound was as beautiful to accompany it. But I think people might not agree with me, but I think this is the best year ever the Hawthorne Blossom, or May Blossom as we used to call it back in the old days, you know. Look at this lot here. It's just incredible. That small bush that's just in the foreground, absolutely lathered in blossom. All this blossom will no doubt lead to lots of berries, and then when we get lots of berries, you get people shouting out it's going to be a bad year, it's going to be a bad winter because there's lots of berries for buds, as they say around here. Don't mean anything, just means it's going to be a good fruiting year, or potentially a good fruiting year, as long as we don't get lots of rain. And there's no sign of rain. We're gradually slipping into a very dry, prolonged dry spell. One of those that, even though it's not red hot, you don't notice it. Mind you, I will be the last one to complain at that. This is the highest point, pretty much. You stand on this mound here and you get a good view of all the various hills and hollows. I've just seen common blue, it's my first one this year. That's a butterfly. It was around in enormous numbers. I'd never seen anything like it last summer, or late last summer. It was everywhere. And I've just seen my first one. But it's a shame that the singing chiffchaffs and the other birds here have to compete with the sound of JCBs and dumper trucks and workmen shouting obscenities as they're putting the next brick in. But just look, the Hawthorne Blossom, look at it in the distance. That raised area in the distance, that's the old Warsop main pit top. The dark trees are pines, but the hedgerows all the way up the side of the former pit top are just completely white. It's quite astonishing, and I don't know whether anyone's noticed it, but this is definitely more excessive, far more excessive, I think, than normal. I just can't believe that they got permission to build on that. Greenbelt land as well. That's another field that has always been cropped for as long as anyone can remember, I think. Gone. Can't produce no more food out of that field anymore because it's full of people living in it. Rather bittersweet coming here. Beautiful habitat, beautiful surroundings, beautiful sounds. As long as you take out the sounds that are being made by man just 50 yards or so away. Hopefully this site may well survive. It could end up being an island within an urban sprawl ultimately. The way our building is going and is being allowed, there seems no end to the limits that building is allowed. And it seems that even Greenbelt land, which at one time you couldn't build on for love nor money, is now just taken up to ease the so-called housing crisis. If there's that much of a housing crisis and they're trying to fill the gap in that supposed housing crisis, how come they only build 4 and 5 bedroomed executive houses? How come they don't build 2 up, 2 down terrace houses or townhouses? That's something that'll baffle me for years to come.